In dealing with music, we have brought up several issues that show you what music is like, not only to hear music, but to see music, which is necessary for all musicians, except those who take it directly from a voice teacher or singing teacher or drum teacher, someone who has the actual instrument in front of you and is doing it. Otherwise, it's written down. Another thing I will mention now, which is also very important before we start to get to the details. By the way, in the next issue, I will illustrate some of this. But what we're talking about now is something called scales. Now, we've done a lot about music so far, but we haven't mentioned scales yet. And of course, this is very important because what a scale is in Western music, for example, and again, we'll use the piano keyboard as an illustration because most people know what a piano keyboard looks like. Saying you find the note C on the piano keyboard, okay? And if you go up those notes, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, you come to another C on the top. That's a scale between the lower C and the higher C. Now that's called a scale. Now that's one scale. There are lots of scales, but that's one scale. And there are major scales and minor scales. We'll get to that another time. But the idea is that music is not only notes, it's not only rhythm, it's not only speed, it's not only where they are on the written page, but also has to do with scales. Now, we have in the Western world right now two scales we use mostly. One is a major scale and one is a minor scale. All that means is saying you're on a piano and you're going from C to C, you only touch white notes. You don't need a black note at all. That's a major scale. But if you want a minor scale, you must touch a black note. In fact, sometimes two, as you go up that scale and then go down from the top. That's a minor scale. But before this happened in the Western world, there were many scales, all kinds of scales, and they didn't start on the same note. They didn't have the same number of notes in them all the time. And these were used especially for early church music. Church music did not have one scale. It depended on the type of church music, what time of year it was, what the subject of that music was as far as the church year goes, and sometimes certain scripture, if they were very important and always done in the church, would have a certain scale. Mixolydian scales and so forth. There are all kinds of scales. That's what they're called in Greek, because that's the name of the scales because it was Greek and it was done mostly in Greece. Now, those scales were many, but what the Western world has done has chosen out of all of them only two scales. Now, the question is, why would we choose only two scales when there are lots of others? Well, that's another whole subject, but it is an interesting subject, and there was a reason for that. So, let's start again. Let's not start on middle C, but let's start on A, and let's start counting up. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. Notice that? There are only A, B, C, D, E, F, G letters in the scale. Then you hit A again. So that's how many letters there are in the scale. How many are there? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. 7. To make a whole scale, you need 8 notes, but it'll be a repetition of the bottom note. Those are the only names of notes in any scale, no matter how many and no matter what key they are in. We will talk about scales more fully soon, and we will also illustrate this and some of the other things we have discussed.